Today I will be discussing the relationship between queer identity and heteronormativity through the lens of Margaret Mead's theory of enculturation. The purpose of this presentation is to mitigate the relationship between enculturated straightness, define the term heteronormativity and its relevance to queer identity, and provide contemporary examples to best understand the role of enculturation in the development of queer identity. To begin, we must first understand the roots of enculturation. American cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead dedicated her life's work to studying the cultural conditioning of psychology, social behavior, and the coexistence of individuals within culture. Mead was the most famous anthropologist of the 20th century and contributed a significant amount of work to the realms of ethnography, psychology, and feminist anthropology. Mead's research contributed a significant amount to the theory and recognition of enculturation. By definition, enculturation is the gradual acquisition of the characteristics and norms of a culture or group by a person or another culture. Without enculturation, humans are unable to think, behave, and develop emotionally in order to function in society. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the term heteronormative is defined as the attitude that heterosexuality is the only normal and natural expression of sexuality. Heteronormativity is more than just an assumption of one's sexual orientation, as it influences various realms outside of the concern of identity. The word queer means peculiar or different, and roots its attachments to the non-heteroconforming individuals based on the norm of heterosexuality. Historically, the term queer has been used as a slur against non-gender conforming, marginalized gender expressive, and non-heterosexual individuals. In recent years, many members of the LGBTQIA community have reclaimed this term and identified as such. According to UC Davis's LGBTQIA Resource Center glossary, manifestations of oppression within gay and lesbian movements such as racism, sizeism, ableism, cissexism, transmisogyny, and assimilation politics resulted in many people being marginalized, and thus for some, reclaiming the word queer is a radical and anti-assimilationist stance that captures multiple aspects of identities. In order to interpret the impact heteronormativity has had on the development of queer identity, it is essential to understand how heteronormativity has maintained pertinence. While it is believed that the word heteronormativity was first used in 1991, the practice, beliefs, taboos, and actions installed through heteronormativity defines the social conditioning of Western culture throughout time. Hence, heteronormativity has been enculturated into Western culture and further acculturates queer identity. Enculturation is present through the interaction between institutionalized heteronormativity and queer culture. Pushing against heteronormative enculturation is the backbone of queer identity. The interaction between these two fundamentals is an oppressive relationship whereby queer individuals have had to fight figuratively, physically, and bureaucratically for equal rights. Heteronormativity employs sexism, the oppression of queer individuals in the workplace, violence against individuals based on sexual orientation, and lack of resources for queer individuals that can lead to transmission of disease, generational poverty, and high suicide rates. It is especially important to understand the inner workings of this concept if you yourself fall into an intersection that contradicts heteronormative values. The greatest example of heteronormative enculturation within the queer community is coming out culture. Coming out culture assumes that an individual is straight unless otherwise specifically refuted. Unfortunately, many individuals never come to terms with their sexuality and are figuratively forced to stay in the closet. Coming out culture also perpetuates closeted queerness, whereby individuals feel as though they must shield or hide their identity due to the taboo of queerness and societal norm of heterosexuality employed by many cultures. Heterosexism creates a hostile environment where there is little wiggle room to experiment with and come to terms with one's identity. The queer community is home to non-gender conforming or expressing individuals. These individuals exist between or out of the binary of male and female. Many individuals identify as genderqueer, gender fluid, or gender nonconforming. Individuals enculturated in a heteronormative society often experience anomie or a disconnect both from reality and their identity as they come to terms with their queerness. Heteronormative enculturation does not just enact values based on sexual preference. Gender roles are a result of heteronormative enculturation, whereby individuals are taught to emulate specific gender expressions and identities. A prime example of an enculturated heteronormative practice is the idea, popularly refuted in contemporary culture but still very much present, that men must make the first approach towards a woman. Many feminists work to interrupt heteronormative values the same way dismantling the patriarchy is discussed and addressed. An example of a heteronormative act that many feminists refute is the use of infantilizing pet names against women such as Baby and Honey. when used in situations where the use of the word was not agreed upon and used when power complexes are present, such as catcalling, is an act of heteronormativity. Until recent years, trailing alongside feminist and social justice movements, many communities have grown to vocalize their disconnect with heteronormativity. This action has expanded from the queer community, with non-queer identifying sources of media bringing attention to the oppressive and harmful undertones heteronormativity employs. Specifically, in their September 2016 issue, Teen Vogue, an internationally popular magazine aimed at youth and popular culture, defined the construct in colloquial terms, bringing forward the construction of gender binaries, differentiating gender expression and sexual orientation, and commodifying queer culture. It's publicization like this that effectively interrupts heteronormativity and acculturates queer culture with pop culture. Like with the conversation of feminism in contemporary culture, many individuals claim that heteronormativity is no longer present nor applicable in current social issues. However, queer theorists explain that the effects of heteronormativity, like sexism, colonialism, and racism, maintain pertinence through the process of enculturation. A research project conducted by Mary E. Hilton at the University of Nevada, Reno, followed the experiences of 19 queer-identifying women attending social work educational programs in the southern United States. The research found that the impact of heteronormative culture and historically embedded biases has on non-heterosexual identifying individuals was inherently negative, creating hostile environments that affected queer individuals' abilities to thrive. With that being said, through radical social movements and persistent demands to embed queer theory into curriculum as an attempt to interrupt heteronormativity, the queer community has taken hold of an immalleable sense of pride, evidently enculturating future generations to be contemptuous with their orientation and identity.